Welcome to the Northwest Provincial Government Podcast. We inspire and encourage our communities through personally inspiring stories of our leaders in government and game changers in our communities. Enjoy this episode.
Dumelang and welcome to another episode of the Northwest Provincial Government Podcast. My name is Lemogang Pule and today we are in the beautiful city of Matana at the Rio Casino Hotel. And our next guest is actually from this area. We have the MEC for Agriculture and Rural Development, MEC Madoda Samb. MEC, thank you so much for your time, sir, and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much for hosting me, but also thank you very much for accepting to host me in Matana.
And I must say the weather today is absolutely beautiful, MEC. Talk to us about what this community is about.
Well, the community of Matana, it's one of the communities in our province where you have an integrated community in the sense that there's almost dominant activities. You would have mining, you would have agriculture, the services sector is also there. Our community, Matana, it's a community on the background of the development of mining industry. But also, this is the community where the arch, Desmond Tutu, the late, is from. So we're one of the best communities in the province that would have contributed in development and secondment of our struggle heroes to the liberation of our country.
Now, MEC, talk to us also about just your upbringing, your background, and how it was like growing up in an area like this.
Well, let me first confess that this area originally used to be called Southern District. At the time, it was Southern District. You had Forchville and Wedela still under Southern District, Northwest. I was from that part of Wedela under Southern District. So, if you like, we are celebrating 30 years of our democracy. Now I'm a 30-year resident of Northwest Province. 30 years. In my life, I had spent only 18 years of youth in the Eastern Cape where I was born. After 18, all my years till to date had been in Northwest. I have no other province I was once a resident or resided on except Northwest. So I've been integrally part of the political life of Northwest, if you would want to say that, because I became a mine worker, a member of a union, a COSATU leader, a union leader, an ANC leader, an ANC Youth League leader, all my life in Northwest. That's what I have known best in my life. It's a province called Northwest. Of course, having worked in the mines for a greater part of my life, worked in the National Union of Mine Workers, worked in Parliament as a responsible manager for parliamentary office for NUM, back in NUM and then in the legislature.
And how did your political career start?
Now, it would have started like any other normal political development. Your exposure in life starts trickling in your view of what society is. So at my youth age, I would have been exposed, being a resident, staying closer to those that would have been the leaders of the African National Congress during the unbanning period when the ANC was banned. And having experienced life of torture of those by the security police by then, and then begin to be attracted to as to why police are so interested to such and such person, as to why is this person the attraction in the community. And then you're attracted to that. So Sipiwa Tobololo, who was an ANC activist at the time, is a person that had helped me understand developments and political life in South Africa at the time, and of course drawn in through courses at some time, high school level, and then ANC Youth League, and then ANC and SACP. The difference in me is that I had joined ANC before joining SACP. I joined SACP at a time when I was highly conscientized by the National Union of Mine Workers political classes. Then I had identified myself ideologically with the SACP. But at that time, I was already a very deep activist, political activist of the ANC Youth League and the ANC at the time. In actual fact, in my time, I was the only NUM leader who was active in the Youth League, because mine workers believe that youth politics are for young people. And now I had known contribution of youth politics in sharpening your greater understanding as you are growing. So that's how I became active. I've only known ANC aligned political life.
That's interesting. Now, MEC, the 7th administration has also tasked you with this great responsibility of leading now the Department of Agriculture and Rural Development. However, it is not your first department that you have headed. Talk to us about that kind of experience and what the responsibility means to you as an individual.
Well, having started in public works, removed 3 years later, and then became a member of the legislature, chaired the portfolio committee, health and social development, and then appointed in health. Surprisingly, health, though it's very complicated, is the only portfolio I had finished 5 years, surprisingly. And if you check in history, very few MECs finish a term in health because of its complication. I'm one of those that would be counted as having finished their term of 5 years. So I had finished a term of 5 years, and as you know, the African National Congress then decides as to where's your next deployment. Fortunately, I had to land up in agriculture and rural development. It's a portfolio that growing up, I had grown up being too much attracted in agriculture. You would know that rural life has to do with dominance of agriculture as a sector that people in rural areas are only exposed to. The only gap which no government had succeeded in the 30 years in dealing with, it's how do we deal with the fact that majority of ruralitarian life has to do with exposure to agriculture and make it a dominant economic sector in rural areas, but also as a basis to ensure that it helps us mitigate movement out of rural areas to suburbs, because there's enough land in rural areas, but it is not utilized to the extent that it can then contribute in ensuring that there's economy and there's life in rural areas without everybody subjected to having to move on the basis of an assumption of life elsewhere outside a rural setting.
Now, as I draw you back, MEC, to your term at the Department of Health, I remember when you had just started at that department, there was some criticism about an individual who needs to be within the medical fraternity being the only one that is fit to lead a department of that nature. Talk to us about that. And you having, completed your term, talk to us about some of, the progresses that you have done within the progress that you have made within the department.
Well, I can tell you is that originally in health, there was even a prescription when we would get an advert for a CEO previously. They would say, we need a medical doctor or a nurse previously. But I'm happy that in 2002, National Conference of the ANC in Stellenbosch, I was a delegate. I was part of those who were arguing that to manage, you don't need a specific qualification. You must be suitably qualified and be a trained manager. You need experience and a qualification, but not specific. From there, it then opened up where management in health for the first time would have been done by someone who has been trained in MBA, for instance, to manage a hospital. Because then everyone else you employ has to have a qualification. To manage or to be an MEC, you don't need to be a nurse or a medical doctor. I can tell you, here am I, finished 5 years, but let me tell you, things that nobody will take away from my term there, that it was one department that was successful on implementing Section 100 and closing it. One department led by me. Secondly, it is one department where, in terms of training of medical officers, it got increased on the basis of my interest. Thirdly, it is a department where, as we speak now, you can go here to Tshepong Hospital, just here in Joburg. It's a hospital in township. It has 9 theaters, 9 operational theaters. Just remember one thing. Last year in May, for the first time, Northwest Province did an open heart surgery successfully here in Tshepong for the first time. Both skills of personnel, equipment, and the strategy was provided by that which was seen to be a person not health-trained background, but a shop steward, by the way, myself. But because I knew the responsibility to provide strategic responsibility does not rest to a qualification. It rests to you understanding the challenges you have at hand. But I must also confess that development would always help anybody. Even if you are currently involved in media, your personal development is going to sharpen you to be the best person in media, even if you don't develop yourself in media, but develop yourself in other careers. This thing that is said, going to school, studying, opens up an individual's mind. I'm one of those people who have been sharpened by, first, experience and leadership exposure. Secondly, having to go and study.
Let me see, who would you say are some of your role models in the country?
Well, my role models in the country, the first one, as we speak now, is the General Secretary of the Communist Party, the current General Secretary of the Communist Party, Comrade Solima Paila. And there's a reason for that. It's because his development mirrors almost my same development. He is a former national organizer of the Communist Party. At the time when Bra Charles was a general secretary, Charles Ngakula, Soli was a national organizer. At the time when Comrade Blade Nzimande was a general secretary, Comrade Soli was a national organizer. He became a general secretary, which means there's an element of an internal grooming and exposure before he became a general secretary of the Communist Party. What I like most about him is that he fears no complication of keeping quiet whenever there's wrongdoing or whenever someone speaks of something that has not association with the liberation movement tradition. You need leaders of such stature. Someone who must not fear to say no when no is expected to be said. Someone who does not fear to say yes. You must have both. Say no in public If something wrong is done and you know this is wrong, say no openly. And say in public, yes, when you know something good has been done. In this instance, it becomes one of my role models at this current conjuncture. Remember, South Africa's political development currently requires those people who are going to identify and unashamedly speak on behalf of the working class and the poor. Remember what Karl Marx says? Karl Marx says dominant views in any society are those of the ruling class. As we speak today, the ruling class in the South African context remains the capitalist class, which means we need more of the working class leadership and working class inclined propagation of policy options. The reason we have high level of unemployment, the reason we have poverty, yet our economy cannot be compared with other countries that have lesser unemployment rate in this instance. Just one thing, get to know the fact that worldwide we are made equal to Eswatini in terms of the level of unemployment. We're equal to Eswatini. Here's the reality. Eswatini itself expects its unemployment rate to be reduced because South Africa must have spaces. If we're equal to them, what kind of a nation are we developing to that element of appearing to be a permanent level of unemployment? There are people we know that for the past 10 years they've been unemployed. And there are no possibilities that they are going to be employed in the near future. It's worse. When your development in the country mirrors that of neoliberal biasness, it tells you that we're still going to have this level of unemployment in the country as we speak. In this instance, Soli must speak in public. He speaks on our behalf. He speaks on behalf of the poor. Someone must speak on behalf of capital, and we know who are those people.
What kind of leader would you describe yourself as?
Well, I'm more of an open person. You see, when you're dealing with me, it's like that which you see, you will get. I'm more of an open person, but also consultative. But I'm consultative, yet I can take a decision. I have an ability to take a decision. But how I work properly in terms of government, I allow those that are employed with the responsibility to advise their space of advice. Based on advice, I take an independent decision to what I see as an option and what I would have been given as an advice. What I am not, I'm one person who's prepared to be told that a decision you took yesterday is wrong. Please change it. I'm one person who even rescinds his own decisions. A decision I took yesterday, when I'm convinced that it's wrong, I rescind it formally myself.
Interesting indeed. And I guess, I suppose it only means that, as human beings, we need to be more accountable on the actions that we take, especially as leaders, where you're able to say that, after some reflection, I do believe that this is a step that we should take instead, MEC.
That's true. That's true. We expected to have self-criticism. We begin to question correctness of decisions we took yesterday and whether they are contributing on the direction expected, either to your portfolio or a direction generally of the government, of a province you are responsible for. So in this instance, be free to say, yesterday I was asked to decide, I decided this. What impact does that has in challenges of our province? And whether that is helping us resolve challenges we have. If not, change it and redirect it to a proper direction. It's almost when I'm saying the issue of self-criticism, allow even those that criticize you to a level where their criticism borders too much to becoming insults, have a thick skin to accept. When you accept to be in a public office, you must know that you have lost but one element, that of a personal being. You can't consistently want to evoke your personal being in public office. Public office means you must be open for public criticism and then your own self-criticism. But take it as a learning curve. It will help you become a better public representative in the future.
I'm curious to know what kind of books you enjoy reading.
Well, I have two areas that I read books prescribed for studies. If I'm studying, like I'm studying even now. Secondly, I can tell you I'm reading too much of political biographies. One of them, by the way, has to do with the fact that today is the 10th of October. Yesterday was the 9th. Just remember one thing. Yesterday forms 57-year anniversary of the death of Che Guevara. He was captured on the 7th of October, 1957, displayed in public on the 8th, killed on the 9th in Bolivia, in a small place called Villa Grande, in La Higuera community. Captured and killed there were 7. If you go to La Higuera today, you will find their original gravesite. I have been one of the beneficiaries. In 2011, when the ANC had a commission on nationalization of mines, they then robbed me in that commission. One of the areas we went to start mining operations was Bolivia. So when I was in Bolivia, I forced those that I was with them there to organize me a chartered flight to go to La Higuera so that I can see Che Guevara's original grave. So that's one biography that I like. I like it on the basis that almost all of us see Che as a celebrity in branding, but we do not attach that celebrity in branding with the ideology and the political strategy of the person. He's one of those that would have dedicated their life to fight for liberation of countries that they were never part of. This is an Argentinian medical doctor, asthmatic. He then decides to be involved with Cuban Revolution. He decides to be involved whilst in Cuba with the revolution of Congo. He decides to be involved, yet he's a minister in Cuba by that time, and decides to relinquish his post as a minister in Cuba and then leave and preoccupied with revolution in Bolivia. And this is where he is captured on the 7th of October, displayed in public that the world must see that this feared man called Che Guevara has been captured and is killed on the 9th of October. He's one of those people that are an inspiration to me, on the basis that we must always be consistent with what we believe as the primary objective of human life, that which is to struggle and contribute in resolution of challenges facing mankind.
You've also recently delivered your budget speech for this current financial year. How was that experience like? And take us through some of those areas of priority which you really want to change within the sector as a whole.
Well, the budget speech was presented on the basis of a new portfolio. But there's one thing that you do. In each department you go to, you have to learn the previous approaches. Don't disregard everything that was done by those who were there before you. and then define future on the basis of challenges the sector is facing and your new ideas going forward. So one of the elements that you would get in agriculture is that countrywide is one sector that has consistently been contributing to job creation post-COVID. It's one sector that has not failed. But what we need to redefine it for, two elements: job creation, sectoral performance. Let me give you some elements on sectoral performance. Every one of us pride ourselves by saying, yeah, we have Texas of Africa. That's what we say when we refer to Dr. Ruth as a beef capital. Say we have Texas of Africa. Little do we know that in actual fact, in the past previous performances of beef as an industry in the country, we have been overtaken by Free State. We are no longer number one in beef. And this is what I'm talking about, sectoral performance. As we speak, we are number one in poultry in the country. Number two is Mpumalanga. The gap between us and Mpumalanga is 2,000 beds, which means if Mpumalanga was today to start operation of a factory of 3,000 beds, they will overtake us and become number one. Now, here's my issue as the MEC. Keep focusing on your sectoral performance as a province, because that which we do best today, if we don't keep tracking our performance and developing new strategies, tomorrow we may be the worst performer in the same sector. Like I'm talking about beef. As we speak, you are talking about new things that we are doing. I'm engaged with a small committee that I've set up to develop a beef beneficiation strategy. What is the meaning of that? The meaning is that we must be talking about beef from an inception of a cow, head of cattle, its growth, its traceability, its impact, and then when it goes up to the life of abattoir, then from abattoir it's now called beef. Remember, a healthy and living cow is not beef. Beef is that which you will get from an abattoir. And in this instance, we're talking about ensuring that both sectors, here you have communal agricultural performance, which our province is a rural province. There's not much that has been done in talking about communal performance. If you are talking about beef, you must be talking about cattle development in the province across the board, from farmers and from small-scale cattle owners in communal area, and ensuring that that which you own in Pitsidi Sulejang as your head of cattle is finally going to be counted on its contribution to what would be beef, so that when they go up on auction and they go up on abattoir, they give you the same scale performance to a farmer who is in Titsobotla. This is what we're doing about. But there's also one element that I want us to focus on as a province. It's an element called training and development of small-scale farmers. It's almost like an incubation program, if you would like. We have Hura. It's responsible for farmer training. But Hura can do better if it were to be restructured to focus. Let me tell you, Hura has an accreditation with AgriSeed, which means Hura can apply for a learnership, train farmers. But what Hura would get from that, it's getting money from the SEDA as a training provider. As things stand, because it is a government department, it can't claim. As we speak, we're responsible for training for some of the national department learners. But we can't claim from the national department because we're not a training provider. We are part of the agricultural department unit. So we have an intention to finally register Khura as a state entity, and that it must train. When it trains, it must claim monies for that training. That money that it trains, it claims, it then comes back and it's used for farmers' development. As we speak, someone who intends to start a poultry, say broilers, that person gets 1 day old chicks in Khura. How do you get them? You get them free. But my argument is that when we start you must get them free. But the next batch of your broilers you would intend to get, you must pay them, because we have started you. From the last batch of broilers, you have made money. The next batch, buy them. You can't buy if Khura remains a departmental division. That's why it must be developed to become one of the agencies of the provincial government for farmer training and development. As we speak, we've just had an advert here, CASP. CASP is the assistance to farmers. The one we said they must apply, and they've applied. The number of people that applies, for instance, you will get 4,000 farmers who qualify for assistance. But your assistance, it's only going to cover 200. It tells you that there's a number of farmers who deserves government support. But in this instance, what we have as a budget is far lesser than that which we have as a deserving community outside there. So Khura, when becoming farmers training and development, is going to close that gap. So an incubation program will be done by Khura. When you are from incubation, you can now apply for CASP. There's another element that we don't talk too much about, the component of rural development. This component that is responsible for rural roads, but this component that is responsible for land redistribution. You would get an instance where a particular community would have claimed successfully their forefathers' land, handed over, turned into a CPA, and get money from government for settlement. Then the challenge becomes, if you check, there's a challenge on sustainability of agricultural activities post-settlement. You would have a CPA of people who are permanently at war with each other. At war for what? Positions of the CPA structure. And there's no preoccupation about agricultural development. If you can ask me, why did Free State dislodge us on beef? It's because at one time, this program successfully claimed back farms in Mulopo. And these farms were dominantly contributing to beef sector. Once transferred, the beef competency declined, and then Free State overtook us. It's not supposed to be like that. We must be keeping the program, having transferred to you land. We must be sure that that which you got as an agricultural active farm will never decline. It will keep being productive as is. Land redistribution must not be associated with decline and collapse of agricultural activities. In some of them, you can even take the situation with the irrigation scheme in Taung. The farmers who are beneficiaries and government list people in those irrigation scheme farms are not the ones who are farming as we speak. None of them. In actual fact, we're working on the program, myself and the Premier, of going back there. What you have there is that people who have rightful access to those farms have decided to individually lease them to people who must now farm. Now, it's not only people, big industries that are farming there. Now, what they then do, government has given you a farm. You give it to me. I then pay you 50,000 per annum. That's what you are getting from a farm whose production, on value, it's more than 50,000 even a month. All what you get 50,000 a year for having leased that farm to me. This is dominant in our province, where even original beneficiaries of land redistribution end up renting out the farms that government has paid for them. And what then they do, they become employees in the same farm they own, because there's no proper way of approaching development. So in our province, if you check, we do have possibilities. There's also a contradiction. Well, one of the provinces that in terms of agriculture was seen to be one of the competitive provinces. But there's also another contradiction. Unemployment in the province is 54%. Poverty in the province, it's around 1.3 million people living in poverty line, which means agriculture is still having a responsibility that it shares with social development, of ensuring that we then focus on those that are poverty stricken and those that are poverty exposed. Then we have a program called food security. And that program, I want to make it that it must grow to a competitive level where beneficiaries of food security end up being themselves small-scale farmers. One of the issues we must deal with the province, it's linking all the agricultural activities with other sectors. For instance, I can take health and education. Nutrition, a school's nutrition system needs vegetables. Who's producing them? It's ourselves. Where are they buying them? In companies, not in ourselves. We're producing. Health, hospital food needs vegetables. Who's producing them? Ourselves. Where are they buying them? In companies, not in our production level. So there must be a link between our food security and capacity to produce as a province. And one element that we must do, from you starting as a small-scale farmer to someone becoming a commercial farmer, there must then be a correlation. We must not be developing farmers as a basis to dislodge the current commercial farmers. The current commercial farmers must be sustainable, and the ones that we're developing must also be competitive to become commercial farmers of tomorrow.
How would you describe the level of transformation within the agricultural sector as a whole?
Well, transformation in the agricultural sector, it's on the basis of the challenges faced by transformation in the country. And by the way, here, remember there's that element in the Constitution, Section 25. The assumption that government must buy a farm that was previously taken illegally and unprocedural should never be a life that South Africa accepts. Because access to land, it's but one element central to, first, ownership patterns. Secondly, ensuring that you have security of tenure. Now, black aspirant farmers would never be competitively ready to compete with white commercial farmers without government investment. Now, transformation in that sector has to do with that, but one element that is also distorting the same transformation is that if we give to land restitution 27 farms today. Then we go to the statistics and say, instead of us having 700 white farmers, they are now 27 minus. They are minus 27. Next week, the same 27 farms return back to the same white owners on the basis of production. That the 27 you've given are people who necessarily do not have an interest in agriculture as a sector, but they had a claim. Tomorrow they are free to still give back. It distorts transformation. But transformation too must not be meant to then contest productivity. When we bring in black people, we are bringing them deservedly. They should be in that sector. It should not be a sector that is race inclined. We are bringing them deservedly. But as we bring them, we are not bringing them to dislodge competitiveness in agriculture as an activity. Anyone who takes up an agricultural offer must accept that he's doing so as a farmer. You don't have to describe yourself by race, but describe yourself by sectoral commitment, that I'm committed in agriculture, which means we give you a farm. Tomorrow you're not going to run away. When you have challenges, you'll be there. When you need help, you will call on government to come and help you. So transformation must mean that there's a balance between the majority of the population in the sector and still competitiveness of the sector. And yeah, in terms of transformation, you will find that there's also a challenge. You know, our province has some God's disadvantages. There are areas where there's no grazing land available. There are areas where there's no water available. But if you check deeper, dominantly, those that would have been there in the sector, your white counterparts, have taken access to land that is both grazing and has access to water. Majority of our people are struggling with access to water for their livestock. Majority of our people are struggling with access to grazing land. Both mining industry and your commercial agriculture is still dominant on the two: availability of grazing land and availability of drinking water for their animals. And as things stand, we then have a challenge of taking a responsibility as government to be the ones who's responsible for boreholing for access of water for those that are black farmers, whereas there's enough water for others who were there at the time the industry was developing. But we must do the both. One of the advantages we have, it's working very well with the Northwest University, especially on new interventions that we have to engage in the sector.
And speaking of new technology, as a province, how are we making use of innovation in that sense to improve our capacity and remain competitive?
Well, we're one of the provinces that are not doing bad in the element of technology, because one of the elements you need to gauge up is that agriculture as we know of today is not agriculture of 10 years ago. Technological development and advancement has been on the basis of improvements you have in the sector. But there's always a challenge that whenever technological inventions come up, they have a challenge of limiting the number of people you are using. Now, there's an issue. You would find that a person is running a structure of egg layers, 5,000, give an example, egg layers. And you will find that there's mechanization of everything. Now, in that, it would not give you enough numbers of human bodies to be employed. you'll find that mechanization means that even feed is distributed through technology. And you would know that water is no longer distributed by individuals in any broiler or layer structure. It has a disadvantage of limiting the number of people that are employed. But it's one element that you can't despise on the basis that it then helps to contribute on the element, competitiveness, and on the element of always ensuring that your mechanized system is used to make you one of the competitive industries in the process. So we're dealing with that, but we also have dedicated funds which are used for mechanization. That's why I'm saying you can't run away from that. We are in the mechanization space, but also the fact that the development technological wise is that if you were to say we are not going to participate, you are going to be closed off. How are you going to compete with the world? You can take goat, one of the industries that is growing very well in our province, but one of the industries we have dedicated agreements on export. If you say, I'm going to do my goat in a normal way, you are not going to competitively compete with people who are exporting. You should be accepting role of mechanization in ensuring that it helps us becomes competitive, and then we will then use an element of getting employment elsewhere. I can give you a practical example because you are media people of the province. You can decide to go and check. If you go to Moinoi, there's a CPA farm there. It's under the CPA at Tlhokogolo. They are farming on blueberries and strawberries. The blueberries you get in Woolworth are farmed there. Now, the reason I'm saying technology is because it has been proven that blueberries are hand-picked. There's no equipment that is used to pick them. As a result of that, each time there's harvesting in that farm, they take 2,500 people for 6 months because blueberries must be picked up by hand. But the other advantage indirectly is that hands of women have been proven to be softer than hands of men. Beneficiaries in the 2,500 becomes women because men are going to break them, those blueberries, when they pick them up. So I'm saying we can't run away, but there are sectors where we can get more in this instance. In such fields, you then exploit them because wherever we have an intervention, I can tell you, you would have a person requesting. The person, it's me and my wife. We request government help. We say, we want to start a chicken egg layer business. Government gives us 2 million and buys everything for us. When you go and check the contribution, the employment is still me and my wife, which means we must exploit wherever we do funding assistance, an element of funding priority, those that are going to create job opportunities, whilst we are not compromising the ones that want to start businesses as individuals because it contributes in sectoral performance.
MEC, you've also been engaging with various stakeholders. What areas of concern are they addressing with you? What are they telling you?
Well, whenever you get an assignment deployed to a sector or a particular department, you must understand that there's an element of sectoral engagement that is very critical. Agriculture and rural development will never succeed only by MEC and departmental staff in both departments. It is going to succeed on the basis of how it reflects its working relationships with people who are involved in such. So in this instance, unions. But in agriculture, when you say unions, it's complicated. There's unions of leading employees. There's also farmer unions, which are sectoral organizations, not necessarily member-based organizations. So you relate with them both. Because the ones that are employee representatives, one issue that we must never, as government, disregard is the contribution of our employees to the success of government programs. That which we say we will do as politicians, we only don't tell public that we will employ people to do it. We say we will deliver services. What we mean practically is that we are going to employ people who deliver those services on our behalf. So then employees become a central component of defining your success. Anytime you negate their role, you are doing that up to only your own peril. Because no government will ever succeed without regard of the contribution of its employees. That's one thing you do. But also, in each department, I know my responsibility is to ensure that there's labor peace. You'll never have labor peace if you ignore unions. You'll never have labor peace if you ignore individual grievances of employees of a department. Now, these ones who are sectoral unions, you work with them on the basis that their contribution will help you grow the sector. In this instance, when you're dealing with agriculture, you don't deal with agriculture at a blank check basis. Deal with agriculture, but understand what are the challenges facing grain industry. Deal with agriculture, but understand what are the challenges facing beef beneficiation. Deal with agriculture, understand, but what are the challenges facing horticulture? When you do so, you're going to develop up your sectoral strategies to ensure that all your sectors do gel in terms of growth. But each individual who's involved in agriculture, for instance, I normally tell people that if you are a family, yourself and your partner are involved in the agriculture, when I see you, I don't see a husband and a wife. I see people who are farmers. That you are sleeping in one bed is none of my business. My business is to see people who are in agriculture. Otherwise, if your partner is not involved, don't bring me your partner, because I have no interest on knowing who's your partner. I have an interest on knowing who are you involved with in agricultural activities, because individually we may be there in one small corner, but as a group, we all contribute to the performance of the province in the sector. That's the basis why you must keep interaction with everybody. And we do so to even again monitor that which you were asking on a second question about contribution on transformation. These interactions are going to help us to make everyone understand that each sector has to transform. Its transformation is not meant to dislodge those that were there, but it's meant to create space for entry for those that were denied access at a particular time by law.
And the budget allocated for your department, how does that, or how has it been used to address the challenges of the people in the province?
Well, the budget given to agriculture is not enough like any other department. But there are issues that we must learn from that budget. And we must begin to find a solution on them. Now, if you request assistance from the Department of Agriculture to do a broiler house, we give you assistance. You then discover that you are not going to make any money in that which we have helped you on. Then you decide to close your business. Well, a situation where when I'm doing visits to districts, I am told this person had applied for 5,000 broilers. 6 months down the line, they closed down. Because if you have 5,000, you're not going to make any break in terms of your performance. You need to start at 40,000 and going forward. Now we give a person, say for instance, 2 million support. In 6 months, the same company that we gave 2 million, bought everything, is now closed. What do you call that? It's fruitless expenditure. But it's fruitless expenditure based on what? Because then we are not responsible for management and performance of each company. We are responsible for assessing a business plan and helping a person. In a business plan, we see that it is convincing. But 6 months down the line, the company is closed, which means 2 million that was used in 6 months, it's no longer active after 6 months. Do we call that fruitless expenditure? We should call it fruitless expenditure. We should call it fruitless expenditure. But we must find a sectoral solution around that so that those that we help fund their businesses and those that we help find their business plans are going to be sustainable. In the projections, it's going to say sustainable. Take another example, that you have a person who applies for egg layers and then we approve. Then avian flu comes in. There's no chickens available. For 12 months, there are no chickens available because of an outbreak. Do you then blame the department on non-performance or not? You won't, because at the time there was not availability of the stock that you were supposed to do, yet you have paid for that. 12 months paid, no delivery because of avian flu. The money we get must be used exactly for interventions expected to help us first on sectoral performance. If we help you in horticulture perform as a contributor in that sector, then we have an economic value of the help. Secondly, help us on fighting joblessness in the province. Employ people in your company, and then we are beneficiaries on the basis of job creation. Sectoral performance, economic value. Job creation, socio-economic value, both combined, we become then winners. The department wins and the province wins. Its money is used to create jobs. Its money is used for economic activity.
In your view, MEC, what do you think can be done to counter corruption that we see in government institutions?
Well, government is not only, corruption is not only in government, it's in both. It's in private and in public corruption. You see, what inspires me is the Communist Party of China's principle on corruption. They say we fight both tigers and flies equally. That's what they say on corruption. They say tigers and flies, which means your socio-economic status and influence, it's not counted when you are involved in wrongdoing. So corruption in our province will only be successfully dealt with, especially in the state, when corruption approach does not have eyes. Deal with corruption on the basis of what the accusation is, not on the basis first of who is accused and who is accusing. If you are accused, we must treat you as an accused person, irrespective of your political status.
Absolutely.
If you are reporting, we must treat you as a person who's reporting, irrespective of your political status. Corruption robs both government and our people access to better delivery of services, because that which is stolen removes or deducts from that which was supposed to be invested. But we must still apply the Chinese principle, both tigers and flies. Sometimes corruption in our province is not used or approached as corruption. It's approached as political differences. People make an accusation as a basis of political elimination. That one we must avoid at all costs. We must deal with corruption when a person is accused. Then let's ensure that that then is handed over to law enforcement agencies. And then when law enforcement agencies are doing their investigation must be independent enough. But whenever that is done, we must publicly discourage corrupt tendencies. But when investigation agencies finishes and are to formally deal with their matters, no person must use political arguments as a basis to hide behind corrupt tendencies.
I want to touch on Tunza Lerule Reloaded MEC. Where has your department gone and what kind of impact have they made?
Tunza Lerule Reloaded. Well, this is one of the programs that we can pride ourselves as the program that has helped government of Northwest to be closer to the people at each Friday. It did not only help the government, it consequentially helped the ANC. One of the reasons why we are a province, not in GNU, it's on the basis that that program here, Tunza Lerule, did help. You know where it helps most? Is that during Tunza Lerule time, there's nobody who says, this road, it's a municipal road. This road, it's a public works road. When we see a pothole, we deal with the pothole as a wrong occurrence in the road, irrespective of whose road is that. This then means during that component at Tunza Lerule, delivery is on the basis of services and not on the basis of whose budget should be used to do this. If we close a pothole, we close a pothole, we celebrate having closed a pothole. As to who should have closed it, it's none of our business. But elements that we must improve is that each element that is identified during Tunza Lerule must be attended to, finished and completed. Our department is participating like in any others. Of course, if you could check the last time when Tunza Lerule, we had been very active in both community projects. That's what Tunza Lerule does, but empowerment of individuals. Now, there are individuals who receives now certificates of bulls on the basis of livestock improvement. There are individuals where we give them projects on the basis of handling facilities. But Tunza Lerule for each department has value. But what is always good is that it is not a program that has new allocations. It's a program where a department is expected to display its delivery on the basis of an approved budget of that financial year. So that which we do as agriculture and rural development does not get money for Tunza Lerule. It is money that was meant for development and implementation of projects in that particular community.
What would you want to have achieved by the end of your term? What legacy do you want to leave behind?
Well, in each area where I go, the first thing that I do, I want us to ensure that one, we performance. 2, that performance could be auditable. 3, that audit could always improve. You see, audit is one element that you can use for public confidence. When you do well on auditing, it means you could account for that which was allocated for you. That's one element that we do most. But I also want to ensure that agriculture does perform, especially on conditional grants. But I want to ensure that as per the APP and as per the budget, we perform exactly to the projects that we had prioritized in the financial year. But I'm not going to be happy with performance if it has no direct impact to having contributed to development of new farmers, to having contributed to sustainability of our projects, commercial farmers, to having contributed to a component of food insecurity, to having contributed to ensure that sectorally we do perform better nationally, so that when counted, we are one of those provinces that are actively contributing to the growth and competitiveness of agriculture and rural development in the country.
Well, MEC, we are now moving on to our second segment on the podcast. This is where we try to make our podcast a bit more interactive. We have reached out to our followers on social media and we have asked them to pose questions that they would like you to answer. And so I do have a list of those questions, so we will be getting to them in no time.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think okay, are you ready, MEC?
Yes, I am.
To hear what the people are asking. The first one is from Bra Bongs Mufasa, and this came through our Facebook page. They are asking, when will the animal health technicians be employed in the Northwest? It has been 10 since we graduated. So I'm not sure if it's 10 months or weeks or years since they have graduated.
Well, I'm happy that he says it has been some months since he has graduated, which means he may either be in a category of unemployed graduates or he may be in the program of government of practical experience. Now, let me also thank him for that question, animal health technicians. It's one field where the country is getting robbed on the basis that majority of those that graduate each year do not stay in the country, all of them. They leave for better options outside. Now, if he is in the category of unemployed graduates, I will then call on you that pass to the Department of Agriculture and Rural Development the contacts of an unemployed graduate. But secondly, we do have a challenge, for instance, in the field of veterinary services. You would go to the organogram of agriculture and find that we're supposed to have 39 people there. At the time I checked, you would have 19, which means there's still vacancies. But the second challenge of government, it's availability of funds. You have a gap of vacancies. Then you have a gap of budgeted for vacancies. But if he's unemployed graduate in veterinary science, let's get all those that are unemployed. But government runs a program, for instance, in agriculture of unemployed graduates. We have a national funded program that gives them an exposure for 2 years. Having exposed for 2 years, they have an option of either being involved in business. Then there's a program we run with the University of Northwest of agribusiness, businesspreneurs. In that instance, you either opt out of the program in 2 years by looking for employment, or you opt out by going to business. And by the way, that's why I'm saying he may be in the program or maybe an unemployed graduate. The phenomenon of growing unemployed graduates in the country, it's an issue that we must face, all of us, because it's becoming now common that we have a gap on production and have a gap on absorption. And this is on the basis of the declining allocations we have on funding.
Okay, our second question comes from Ben Utsile Huma Jr. through our Facebook page as well. They are saying, Honorable MEC, what concrete steps in the Northwest Department of Agriculture and Rural Development taking to integrate agriculture education into school curricula, support new farmers, and promote innovative solutions for food security? And how will these initiatives be funded and measured for success?
Okay. First, in terms of integration in schooling system, we have almost 3 levels. We have an element of agricultural high schools. We have a focus there. Both ourselves and the Department of Education have a focus on agricultural high schools as a basis of development of agriculture at an earlier age in learning. The second one will then become your college development on agricultural colleges. The third one becomes the university training in that instance. Now, what we then have as integration, then you would have CETA-funded training. On the basis of that, integration means there should be a correlation between high school, college, CETA, and university. But I can tell you, there's many of agricultural high schools which are performing very well on agriculture as a sectoral education. There's also an element where our colleges are doing well, but we have a limited money to sustain colleges. As we speak, we have a debate on what to do with agricultural colleges. The first one is that keep them with the Department of Agriculture province. Based on that, where are you going to get new money to sustain them? The second one is keep them with agriculture and give them to the national department. Where will they get new money to sustain them? The third one is give them to the universities. Because universities do have money to sustain them. But what it means is that if we were to give Agricultural College of Northwest to the Northwest University, it now ceases to be an agricultural college linked to the Department of Agriculture, but it is a university college. But we still have same access. It's on the basis of non-availability of funds. The third one on the question is, now, what we then do is that there are projects that are meant for poverty alleviation. We do have funding for those. And these are the projects where I said all we need is to develop them to a level of sustainability. Produce for poverty alleviation, but produce extra so that extra from the produce can then be sold in the market. But secondly, those that are in one community, all of them responsible for poverty alleviation projects, food gardens, combine them. Let them not produce one produce. Let them produce many. When they then involve the market, in the market they're going to sell as a group. If you produce spinach and I produce cabbage, when you need cabbage, you buy from me. When I need spinach, I buy to you. There's sustainability in that. Rather than having all of them producing spinach at a go. And when all of them are looking for potatoes, nobody is producing potatoes yet. One household produces potatoes, the next one produces spinach. When this one needs potatoes, he buys next door. When this one needs spinach, he buys next door. When they approach the market on the basis of a community produce, not only spinach. It is variety of what they are producing. And we make them ensure that you fight poverty, you can also develop that to a level of selling.
All right. Our next question, MEC, is quite lengthy. I'm going to ask you just to bear with me. I would like to know whether the Department of Agriculture and Rural Development is willing to employ the transformative aspect of their department through the inclusion of science and technology as a means to introduce innovative systems that mitigate many of the challenges faced within the agricultural sector. Rather than solely investing in primary and secondary agricultural practices, are there possibilities of integrating science and technology as a way to contribute to the agricultural sector in the Northwest Province? In addition, can research projects that have an objective to apply science and technology in the sector be supported and funded by the Department of Agriculture and Rural Development? I am one with such a project. And this question comes from Karabo Yanko Chiocha. Oh, I hope I'm not butchering the name, from our Facebook page.
Karabo. Okay. No, I think that first, by its nature, the agricultural department, it's a science-based department. So any scientific intervention or research has to be practically used to improve our approaches going forward. Now, any research-based information should practically be developed to options and solutions for the future. If you have research and its products are not used, it only remains a researched work. It would have no correlation to whether that research can change or whether that research can improve. And yes, the department is open to anyone who has a proof of a scientific research that can be used to change a future and help the department with future interventions. In actual fact, I had argued with them when the research directorate was presenting to me. These guys in research have done a research. I will tell you one area I said to them, it must never be allowed to end. They have a research of plants that can help cure type 2 diabetes. The same plants that they've researched can be used to reduce level of cholesterol. Now, I said to them, this is a research you have. But here's an issue. South Africa is the capital city of the world on type 2 diabetes. Yeah, we're number one in the world. And we always know the correlation between the level of cholesterol and type 2 diabetes. So that research revelation should not be telling us about that which they've researched and found. It must be telling us about development of that to finally becoming a real product, which means we must also link our research with an element of agricultural development, with an element of agro-processing. Imagine if those herbs and discoveries can be planted in our province. We have someone who's planting. The second person must be the one who's doing agro-processing. The third person must be the one who now does medicinal intervention, 3 levels. It could be so huge to a level where, what if we do that best and become the first province in the country to then produce medicinal interventions that are going to be used for type 2 diabetes and cholesterol. And at the stage, we all overly rely on imports from other countries and not internal. So that's the basis upon which I take research very serious. So research too must tell us that which you are supposed to plant this season, you can't plant it this season because climatic changes are going to expect you to do this and that, and then you do that as a basis of avoiding disasters. As we speak, there are elements where, as we project what would be the climatic conditions, farmers decide to plow. 3 months down the line, climatic conditions become serious to a level that which they've plowed will not give them any yield in their crops. And it has a basis of pressure on investment. It has a basis of pressure from competitiveness of a sector. So research, we will support such projects.
What avenue should he then use to communicate his ideas with the department?
Well, there are many avenues. A person can write to an MEC and say to an MEC, I'm so and so, I have this and I think it's a solution. The MEC will pass that through to relevant officials for those officials to go and check if that's true. Or secondly, the person can directly approach either the sub-district office. We have sub-district offices in each municipal level. Sub-district office, or approach a district office, or approach the province directly. So whenever a person has a suggestion, even if it's not in agriculture, public is allowed to propose projects they believe can help government in its government operations. It is not only government officials that must suggest. Some of the successful projects are suggested by members of public. So Karabo is welcomed to formally give us a proposal. We'll be interested in engagement with that.
All right. The next question comes from Rick Sepatle, and it also came through our Facebook page. Why can't you help unemployed youth of Taung by offering them greenhouses and provide them with the necessary training to reduce the high rate of unemployment caused by the ANC since 1994?
Okay, let's deal with the fact. Unemployment is not caused by the ANC. For as long we believe it's caused by the ANC, we will not get solutions. Unemployment is as the basis of an economic performance. But South Africa's economic performance has serious structural challenges. There are times where our economy grows, but that growth is a jobless growth, which means structurally there are things the economy of South Africa is locked in that must be changed policy-wise. So it's on the basis of economic performance and whether that economy does then create jobs or not. It's not created by the ANC. It's an issue of an economic performance. That's one. Two, unemployment in Taung, yes, but unemployment in our province in general, 54%, like I have said. Government departments individually have a responsibility to look up to options that are going to help us intervene in the level of unemployment. One of them, it's encouragement of young people to be involved in business development. In fact, in the same Taung, there's one young person there, very dedicated chap. This guy in Taung is involved in agriculture, young person. He is now giving us, like I said, proposals. He's giving us a proposal that if we were to partner with him, what they are farming is then agro-processed to olive oil. In Taung, Nokhan. In olive oil in Taung, Nokhan. The business proposal for the fellow suggests that it is going to help that business first grow. Secondly, it may create close to 100 job opportunities. This is what I'm calling proposed interventions individually by members of public. So it means not only government. The second one, is that as Department of Agriculture and Rural Development, we're also exploring options of engaging and finalizing our discussion with the AgriSeed. We have an intention to have 400 learnerships with effect from the 1st of April 2025 with AgriSeed. But we must plan now that when we have 400 young people on learnership for 12 months, where will they end after 12 months? Because the advantage there is that a learnership gives you 3,000 rand stipend. In a year's time, they will be sustainable because they're going to be getting a stipend, but they're going to be exposed in agriculture. The issue is, are they going to be committed in going to the sector and becoming some like this one I'm talking about, who have an interest in creating jobs and being involved in the sector and not become an employee? And yes, the issue of unemployment in our province, it's serious. All government departments are working in ensuring that. The problem is government cannot only solve the challenge of unemployment. Both private and public sector must contribute in this instance, and we must ensure that finally we come closer to solutions with our young people on the challenges they are facing in terms of unemployment. It's in Taung, but it's in the province as a whole.
All right, we have two more questions left, MEC. And the second last one is from Ditiro Mokhatle, and it came through our X page. They're asking, what is the department going to do in the 7th administration to support young farmers in the province? Is farming attractive to young people, MEC, in your observation?
There's a number of young people who are involved in farming in the province. Some of them are provincial winners, some of them are national winners. Remember, one of the young people that became a national winner in beef is from Vryburg. He won a national competition, agriculture. So it means he had became the best amongst 9 that were competing with him from other provinces. 8 and himself, he became number 1. It's not only that. There's also 2 structures we are working with. One is called YAD, it's Youth in Agriculture and Rural Development. The second one is WAD, Women in Agriculture and Rural Development. We are working with those structures to ensure that both women and youth are attracted to agriculture as a sector. But the good attraction of agriculture for young people is that those that are involved must be able to be helped to succeed, so that the success stories are more than the failure stories. That's what we must do as a department. In this instance, we must also be on the basis of career advices. Career advices. I have spoken about agricultural focused high schools. If we see what they can produce, and we know that in our community we have 2 vets, and that thing also, working with the Northwest University, we are working on making a formal submission to the National Cabinet that we must be the 2nd university in the country that is accredited to provide veterinary services school. Currently, it's only University of Pretoria on dental sport program on training vets. We are working to ensure that we are now accredited. Remember, you asked me about health. I left health having been accredited for a medical school, which must start in 2028. I'm in agriculture. My first pronouncement was that we must have a veterinary school, and that school must be based in Mahikeng, because the Mahikeng campus is the dominant campus that is responsible for practical agriculture, and we're working very well with them in that instance. So we have aspirations to have a veterinary school in Northwest, a veterinary university program in Northwest. It's going to help us grow. But in this instance, when we say, how do we help? It's on the basis that individually, we must support emerging farmers. Secondly, ensure that their successes are publicly related. Thirdly, ensure that whenever there's an entry and there's a failure, you learn from that. It's not like you are going to go to just become a successful farmer. Each sector has challenges. You start, you fail, you learn, you move on, as long as you have support. The third one, like I said originally, we want to introduce an incubation program. An incubation where, for instance, we get someone who says, I have a business plan in piggery, young person. We help that young person to start. So it's from the concept to practical. The only time we get out, it's when the young person can now have a contract of supply. Then we say you are on your own. We will then monitor you and provide you. Remember, agriculture provides with two services. We provide you with extension services, balimi or balimisi, if you want, kasitswana, balimisi. We help you with extension services. Secondly, we help you with the veterinary services. These ones who must help you livestock diseases that we do free. So one of the challenges we have, that program yabalimisi, it's declining on the basis of the number of extension officers we have. We must never allow it to decline, because each person who's a farmer today would have started being helped by Mulimisi, an agricultural extension officer.
Interesting. Okay, so our final question is from George Makume, and it came through our TikTok page. They want to know, how do we access funding from the department as emerging farmers in rural areas in the province?
That program is what I have said to you, that in each year we advertise a call for people to make proposals. So this year, advert has already been closed. And this one that is closed, it's for financial year next year, which means everyone who has applied and everyone that would then be approved will be funded next year. Next year, we'll be opening for that other year. What they must keep up with is to go to agricultural offices, ask them, how do I apply? So if you go now, what will help you is, because you may then look to those elements that make you comply and work on them so that the next financial year's call, you comply. And I'm saying this is the one that has almost 4,000 applicants, but we don't have above 200 allocations. That's one. That's why we're doing three things. We are developing a program on goat massification. We are developing a program on beef beneficiation. We are developing a program on grain as a sector, so that these ones who are going to fall off on the advert can then be rediverted to the same programs we have. If we have beef massification funded, then it means people would not be expected to go to the advert for beef. They would be expected to go through the program of beef massification. Then we have another program that is very successful, that of Nguni project. We have almost more than 300 farmers who are helping in the province for Nguni. And this year's advert was closed earlier on for Nguni. They are still responsible for checking who qualifies, who does not qualify, which means a person who aspires to be a Nguni farmer would have to request on that program of Nguni. So in this program, you take goat mastification as a standalone, you take beef beneficiation as a standalone, you take grain as a standalone, you take Nguni as a standalone. Then you know the number of people you help in the province. I'm saying we have more than 300 on Nguni alone. The number of people in the province you help are going to be more than what is provided for through the national grant, CASP and ILIMA.
Well, I also have a question of my own, MEC. If you were to make a choice between roads, hospitals, and farms, which would you choose and why?
Well, if I were to make a choice, I would have chosen hospitals. There's a reason for that. There's too much backlash on public health. There's too much that we are told that public health can't do in this because there's dominance of private health providers. But what is not looked at is who's funding. Reality is, if you take Klerksdorp Tsepong and you go to Klerksdorp Tsepong today, you find that it's full without beds. You can go to the next private hospital 5 kilometers away from the hospital that is full on beds and get that private hospital empty. Nobody is asking as to why a hospital must be empty and another hospital must be full. That's why the question of necessity for national health insurance scheme will always be there. It must answer the question, why should Nkron be empty today and Klerksdorp Tsepong be full? Why is it that when Klerksdorp Tsepong is full, the same patients cannot get access to Nkron for beds and that government must be charged at the same rate? I would have chosen it on the basis of that. But here is a reality. With agriculture, I will still be happy to contribute on the basis of the challenges we have on food insecurity. If I'm saying 1.3 million in the province is food insecure, contributing to ensuring that there's a program that deals with that, but also we then deal with decline of that program. When we ensure that our food security programs would be sustainable and be production-based. For instance, why must we take eggs from Khura and distribute them to a community in Kanana, eggs, and then we say it's food security? It's not food security. It's hunger attending. If you give them ready eggs, you're not dealing with food security. You are giving them food to eat today. So you are fighting a daily hunger. The second one, why must I take live chickens from Khura, distribute them to Ikageng? And what happens? The family I give live chicken has two things. One, they either sell them. Two, they slaughter all of them. There's meat today, tomorrow there's no meat. That's why I'm saying food security must be developed to a level of sustainability. Give a person seeds to plant, monitor. The person must plant for sustainability as a family, then they must sell, then they have an income.
What words would you give to anyone who looks up to you and would want to follow in the same footsteps as you have?
Well, the advice is that first, define that which you need in future. But secondly, whatever you are aspiring, be yourself. Thirdly, only commitment and dedication will lead to your success. Don't have and adopt wrong people because you see, but this one is right. Anyone who wants to go through the same must do exactly that which I did. As committed, disciplined, and always been there to learn, and always been there to stand up for personal development. That thing is very critical. You must reject anyone who thinks that knowledge can just be assumed and not being a commitment you go through over time, must reject that. But all of us have role models who are responsible for a correct choice. It depends on who you choose as role models. If your choice is what people have, then you will always have wrong role models. Because not everybody who is successful through an open, honest process. Some success is derived from crook work. Some success is derived from illegal and criminality. So you will just see the success and don't know what contribution the person has. And you learn later that criminality is involved. None of us must ever celebrate success that is derived from criminality.
And a final one from us, MEC. If people want to get in touch with you, what processes should they follow to do so?
Well, the first one is get in touch with departmental websites. The second one is, of course, the official ones. Talk to the department. The third one is, I normally get most, wherever I go, public works, health, and now in agriculture, I normally get most of the community engagement through my direct line. People simply drop up a message. Once they do that, I myself officialize that. So when you send me a WhatsApp and say this and this, everybody will tell you. They would have sent me a WhatsApp. A day later, they get a formal call from the department that this is what you said to the MEC, we're making follow-up. I'm very good in accepting people's advices. And I'm also very good in ensuring that I do make follow-up on those that make proposals directly to the department or to myself in person. But first, they must get in touch with the department. But remember, Mos, sometimes people get frustrated by departmental processes. You would have each one of us run Facebook, this and this. They must interact with those sessions, but when frustrated, go to the person straight. We are public representatives. Is the value of people voting. You see, one of the areas we must keep as public representatives, keep ensuring that we create hope in the system. And how we react to the people's concern must be developing trust. Because only when they have hope and trust in the system, they are going to register as voters. And only when they have hope and trust in delivery, they are going to vote. And only when they know which political party delivers are going to vote for that political party. It's a contribution. It's a cycle contribution. What we do now contributes on building confidence for the next local government elections registration. What we do now contributes on convincing people who did not vote that in actual fact voting is cool. We have to vote.
Well, MEC, thank you so much for your time. It always is a pleasure talking to you, and we wish you all the best in your plans for the 7th administration and beyond.
Thank you very much for giving me space. You will not know that what you are doing to me and other MECs is but a responsibility of communication in ensuring that the public is always made aware of what their representatives are facing and what they can get from departments. In actual fact, you are taking government to the people through communication. That's what communication is meant for. Thank you very much for your contribution in ensuring that public now knows who's the MEC of Agriculture and Rural Development and what are the issues that were faced as a sector, direct from an interview. Thank you very much.
Thank you, MEC, for that endorsement as well. Well, that is how we wrap up another episode this week on the podcast. From myself, Lemogang Pule, and the team, we'll see you next time. Goodbye.